Welcome back, Dads and Dadettes with Bacon. I am Big Ben, and here is our NFC and AFC North review, kind of the draft as well as their offseason. Mentioned before in our post, I'm going to have some friends, and I'm bringing one of those friends on with me right now. My friend Rob Royd. How you doing, Rob?
Good. How are you, Ben?
Doing great. So, it's our favorite time of the year. See your pennant in the back. Great times in Nashville, and here another great week in Green Bay. Got to be feeling good as a Ravens fan. We'll go through that here in more details in a second. Just the board fell about perfect, I think. Yeah. And the Ravens followed their philosophy. The best player available. It certainly seems to be the case as they went through the draft.
Yeah.
But early impressions here right away. What stood out to you looking at the AFC North before we go into the details of it for both the Ravens as well as your opponents in the division?
Honestly, I think the Ravens definitely stood out in the AFC North. Like hearing little bits and pieces from, the Pittsburgh and Cleveland and Cincinnati. I do think the Ravens stood out. They followed their protocol, like they go on the best player available, and they hit it with almost every pick. And I think it kind of was how the board fell because so many people were jumping for different players and positions that their guys just fell to the Ravens. I do think the Steelers drafted well. I know there was all that talk prior to the draft that the Steelers were possibly taking Shador at, what were they, 15-ish, or no, not 15, whatever they were, 20 something. There was a lot of talk about them taking Shador, and then Mike Tomlin liked Shador, and so they didn't, and they ended up drafting decent, I think. And then Cincinnati, I just felt was kind of just there, like nothing wow, but they were there. And then the confusing one with Cleveland, like I thought they had a couple of decent picks, but then they ended up taking Shador late, which nothing against Shador, but then that quarterback room is just crazy insane. Like five quarterback, or is it five, four,
Five right now, yep.
Yeah, five quarterbacks. Like, obviously, being from Baltimore, heartfelt to Joe Flacco. I want the best for him, so I want him to start. And he actually is a really good mentor to guys. Like, he doesn't pride himself on being like the starter. I'm old. I'm here. I'm here to help if you want me. I fill in when I can. My favorite, actually, out of all of those is Kenny Pickett, surprisingly. So,
Pittsburgh guy, no less, now playing in Cleveland. It's definitely interesting. Let's jump into this here a little bit. I'm going to put my screen up here for us, and let's look at the Ravens first in more detail as we get to roll through this. So I'm going to make this look a little better.
Yeah, I was going to say, can you make it a little bigger?
Yeah, so look, before we got to the draft, DeAndre Hopkins, obviously the headliner overall for what, again, there's other players here. There's key additions I put to the side. And also cornerback with Awuzie is another piece that, again, is he going to be your number one guy? And by no means, but depth was needed. And I think he was a pickup that made sense. So how do you feel with the free agency before this coming in? Did you feel like they did enough with these being key additions, or were you kind of wanting more?
Well, I also think following the way the Ravens do their procedures is they don't stack a lot in free agency. Excuse me. They like let the free agents come to them and let it fall that way. But they don't go out necessarily jumping for free agents. I don't think they even necessarily jumped for DeAndre Hopkins. I think he was just out there and he knows, Derrick Henry, and they probably were communicating and being like, hey, you should really come to Baltimore. And the Ravens got together with him and his crew and got it done. But you don't necessarily see the Ravens all the time going out and jumping for the big free agents. So, go ahead.
So, no, so did any piece of you, and we both are big mock draft guys, ever think Malachi Starks would be there for the Ravens to pick?
So honestly, going through the mock drafts and stuff, I kind of was I was kind of wanting Xavier Watts out of Notre Dame.
Okay.
Not that Starks wasn't on my radar, but I kind of wanted that ball hawk. I'm still partial to Ed Reed, and we haven't had necessarily a ball hawk in a while. I think Kyle Hamilton's still a little bit of that, but Xavier Watts out of Notre Dame had I think it was like 6 interceptions this past year, and to me, if you're putting up stats on a high caliber team like Notre Dame, like you're doing something right. So that stuck out to me for Xavier Watts. But then I was keeping track of Sparks and being like, I honestly don't think he'll fall to us. Like that's kind of why I was going the more Xavier Watts route, is
Mhm.
because I'm like, I don't think Sparks is gonna fall. Like almost every mock draft that not that I did, but that even that I looked at, it had Starks going in the teens at least.
Right.
So I honestly didn't think he'd fall. But I'm okay taking him because his stats are just as good as Xavier Watts. Maybe not with the picks, but the passes defended and just being in the right place, right time. And he truly does seem like a Ravens player. Tough,
So
gritty,
what does
all
this
that
pick
stuff.
do for Kyle Hamilton? Is he more going towards the slot? Is he going to stay more strong safety? I mean, I think that Starks is a little more of the free safety, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
So just to be kind of looking at how that shakes out, you can keep Hamilton at strong. You can move him to nickel, but what's your
So
preference?
so I think like a lot of people ask this question prior to, and also like when I would talk about it, like, oh yeah, we should get a safety. We should draft a safety in the first round. People are like, why? We don't need a safety. I'm like, yes, but what the Ravens want to do, they let's see, last year 2024, 2023, and even the beginning of 2024. Um, Kyle Hamilton was really doing a good job at the line with blitzes, but also in coverage. So in that nickel formation, just kind of like roaming the field and letting it happen, being there for tackles, all that stuff. And then because of Marcus Williams, they had to adjust and kind of put him in the back end with Darius Washington, which is fine. It's great. It worked out. Um, but I think they wanted to free Kyle up to be
Okay.
that rangy person that like maybe can play kind of a middle linebacker nickel spot like near the line in the middle of the field. So I think that's why they drafted Starks, is because you can have Starks and Adarius Washington still handling the back end, the deep safety, all that. Even Starks can come up because he has some experience like at the line in the middle of the field, that type of stuff. But I think it frees Starks and Washington to play the back end and frees Kyle Hamilton to just be rangy and be all over the place, and in a good way all over the place. Not that he's not paying attention, but like being the middle linebacker esque type of thing in the nickel and blitzing at the line. He's gotten really good at tackling up close to the line. So
No, that's fair. I think overall, looking at it, you still have what they've done through free agency in the draft the last few years now. The secondary is kind of reshaped now. I mean,
hmm
some old names have gone their way,
hmm
but just kind of breaking through there. You mentioned Washington, Nate Wiggins last year, TJ Tampa, Brandon Uze, got Kone from Western Michigan here. Longer Beam's a guy I like a lot. They picked up late in the draft.
yeah.
So I feel like there's a lot of things here to look at and say the secondary is definitely better.
They also brought in real quick, like last year, he didn't get much reps because of just how deep it was at the time, but he played a little bit later in the season. Was Bo Braid out of Maryland? He's a
Yeah,
safety as well, so he can step in to fill that. Like they don't necessarily always draft like based off of position, like based off of safety or cornerback. They draft DB esque people that can like kind of play multiple positions, but just is rangy in the back end, if that makes sense.
it does. And I think the piece that the Ravens defense is notorious, right? With Ravens defenses, Bears defenses, they're known for they're usually going to be good. It's
Yeah.
a matter of how good and or how injured are they. They're not good. You're going back even the last few years when Kyle Hamilton's been hurt. it's a different defense. I think now with Starks, it gives you a little extra there. And I know I'm going to bring up a name that's not your favorite Raven, but Dafe Owe is now some pressure because Mike Green fell right in your laps at edge that Owe needs to show up or he's going to be finding his way out the door. So Mike Green might be one of those steals of day 2, even though he was taking a little, in that second round, heck of a pick for them. And got to be consider themselves very blessed to be getting a guy who shows he can get to the quarterback and he can disrupt the offenses for sure.
As I am ecstatic that Mike Green fell to us. He was projected top 10, top 15 at the most. Couple mock drafts had him going to Atlanta at 14 or 15, somewhere in that range.
Yep.
So like the fact that we stole him, in my opinion, in the late second round is just beyond me. I know he was dealing with off the field issues. I like to think that the Ravens have done their due diligence in investigating all of that. And it sounds like, from what I understand, and again, I'm not that knowledgeable, but my understanding is he came out to teams and told him about his stuff too. So it wasn't like he was trying to hide anything. He put it all out there. But to get Malachi Starks and then Mike Green in the second, it's just beyond me, like how he fell. Because again, to me, stats prove it. So, yes, I understand Marshall, not a big name college. So I get that. But at the same time, he put up 17 sacks?
Yeah.
17 sacks is 17 sacks. And his burst off the edge is just, it's another level. And a lot of big name people in the industry really had them ranked as the second best pass rusher off the board.
Yeah.
And they kind of admitted that, because of his off the field issues, that's why he fell. But they had him ranked very, very high based off of his skills alone. So the skill's there, So it's amazing that he fell to us. The first 2 picks for the Ravens, Starks and Green, it's just beyond me. That was my favorite part of the draft. And there's still a lot of other people that I'm really excited about too, but those 2 specifically.
And look, I love what they do with the O-line overall. I'm not going to go into details there, but I will say that Peebles at D-tackle and Longerbeam at corner are 2 of my favorite pickups they had, late in that 6th round. But those are 2 pieces who could stick on this defense, especially.
Hold on, I just want to make one point about the offensive line. It's Vizon out of Alabama A&M, I think.
Yep.
It was Alabama A&M. So he was not on my radar at all. But I listened to the Ravens put out it's Garrett Wilson, or not Garrett Wilson, but 2 of the media guys for the Ravens. They put out their final 7-round mock draft. They do it every year for their podcast, and they put out the 7-round mock draft. So I listened to it the other day, and I was going through it, and one of the names that one of them put out was Vizon. They were like, the Ravens have talked to him. They seem very interested, so don't be surprised if his name's called. And that was before the draft. And then the Ravens end up picking him. And I do think, granted, it's a HCBU school. I get that. But also, he's a 4-year starter, started every game, and I think he's a sleeper. And he's somebody that can sit behind Ronnie.
Yep.
They signed Ronnie for 2 years. So he is the type of left tackle that can sit behind Ronnie, learn from Ronnie, and then in 2 years just step right in. So I think that is a very huge sleeper pick, in my opinion. So,
very fair. Rolling through the next team here, we got the Bengals up next in the division. And look, the joke last year was all gas, no brakes. They can score, but they can't stop anybody. they put a lot of effort into that going through. TJ Slayton, they gave a big contract. Came out here at Green Bay from Florida originally. Demetrius Knight's a guy I had highly ranked coming into it. Shamar Stewart was a little bit interesting to me. I thought I don't think he's even the best edge rusher on his own team. But adding Stewart, to me, looks like it's going to be that Hendrickson replacement.
Yeah.
Adding in Slayton, adding in Knight, you've got a little bit more to go with here on the defense. Barrett Carter, linebacker Clemson, the 4th round. So there's.
Oh.
That's me. Sorry about that, guys. So here, anyway, lost my thought there a little bit. No, so the pick to me of their draft that I liked a lot really was looking at their last pick in Taj Brooks. The Bengals have done a good job in terms of being able to find ways to make running backs valuable.
Yeah,
the guy that can come around and can do a lot for them. Leads Texas Tech in the history in rushing yards, so it could be a good piece. But for you, as an opposing, obviously in the division, what was your takeaway looking at the Bengals and what they did?
So I'll start with Shamar Stewart. I'm with you. I wasn't sold to him because I know there was a couple mock drafts that had the Ravens looking for edge, and I know Shamar Stewart was one of them, and James Pierce was one of them, and but to me, Stewart and Pierce didn't flash for me. It was kind of did they put up points? Yeah, sure, they put up numbers, but they just didn't. There was something off with them. I don't know. I wasn't sold on either one of them, and especially if the Ravens would take him, I wasn't sold on it. So, I'm not sold on Cleveland or Cincinnati taking him. He might turn out okay, but I'm just not wow. Demarius Knight, I actually was looking at him even for the Ravens, picking up somebody to go next to Roquan. So I do like Knight's production out of South Carolina. He was on my radar. So, I think he'll have a halfway decent career. I could be wrong, but he seems talented enough to work at it. I'm with you though. Taj Brooks, I'm if I was Cincinnati, I'd be psyched about that because I think he has production and he can put up production. He did it at Texas Tech, and I was kind of surprised he fell as far as he did. And even in some of the mocks, I had the Ravens taking him late, but I was also just shocked that he was on the board that late. I was expecting him kind of in the 4th and 5th, not necessarily the 6th. So, but I think that's a sleeper pick for them at running back. So,
yeah, I think overall looking at their running back group, you've got Brown, you got Moss, they added Pirine, but this is a very open competition as far as for me looking at it, as far as what you can bring to the table. And Brooks could, at a minimum, become a spellback for them.
Yeah,
and I think he could even push himself into a better position there in that group.
Yeah.
But overall, for me, as the Bengals, it was just they tried to play the defense. I don't think it's enough. I think they're still another offseason away from making this team contender again. They took care of business keeping the wide receiver core intact, but there's still more work to be done in Cincinnati.
If it's me, I think they spent too much money on a wide receiver. I get Chase. That to me makes sense that you should have paid him. But what's the other one? Why am I drawing a blank? Taj Boyd? No, not Taj Boyd, but the other one. What's the other receiver that just got paid with him?
Sorry, my father-in-law just broke a hard-boiled egg and made me laugh a little bit. I'm sorry with that. But I'll moving over here to the Browns next.
Yeah.
Look, this is an intriguing offseason overall, and this kind of team that a lot of people were watching for the course of the draft because there was a link to Shedeur Sanders or Travis Hunter. They made the huge trade, right? Traded back with Jacksonville. It kind of looked like, holy cow, the Browns are going to actually really reset. Now, look, they got a lot of draft capital again for next year, but the more they drafted, the more confused I got. Looking at what they did, Mason Graham got it. Love the pick, no problem there. Adding Devin Bush in the offseason linebacker, again, makes sense. Good. Judkins, okay, you're moving on from Chubb. Ford's not a feature back. Okay. Dylan Gabriel. Okay, they got my attention when it happened. A third-round quarterback, and you're talking about this quarterback room a little bit before. You've got Flacco, you've got Pickett. Now you throw Dylan Gabriel in. I'm like, okay, this is interesting. Let the kid get some experience, kind of watch Joe Flacco work, and then see what happens. But they drafted Dylan Sampson, who, again, I think is better than where he was picked. He's a fourth-round pick at running back. So Judkins Sampson appears to be, with Ford now, a three-headed monster for their backfield. But then trading up and getting Shedeur Sanders in the fifth really surprised me. Just because after that Dylan Gabriel pick, I didn't think this was going to happen. I'm sure I heard some stuff on the radio this morning too, talking about, Prime was right there the entire time when they were in night one. But you didn't see Prime on day 3 when Shedeur's dancing with all the siblings there. So,
so here's a couple things. Going through it, same as you. Graham, great pick, no brainer. He's going to be great. I do think they could have went a couple different directions. Part of me liked the trade back, but part of me didn't like the trade back. But either way, Graham's great pick. I do like Judkins. I think it's the Chubb replacement. I think he can put up numbers. He's, to me, I think going to be more your feature back than Ford is. Maybe I'm wrong, but I like Judkins. I do like that. The other small tidbit, I was really big on fanning the tight end at a Bowling Green. I think he's going to be super sleeper and probably a Njoku replacement at this point. He's got good passing numbers, even at a small school. He's just kind of, for me, a sleeper pick for Cleveland that they went under the radar and got this guy at tight end.
If they give him time. I don't think he's there yet. I think it's one of those things he's going to have to learn the pro game a little bit.
Yeah.
But I do like overall skill sets there. Wasn't making it. With Judkins, I'll mention he had some locker room issues at Ole Miss before he moved to Ohio State. So there's some concern there as well. Put up great numbers at Ole Miss, but just kind of a watch out there for Cleveland as well. Overall, to me, my notes are the quarterback room and the running back room are going to be a blast to watch in preseason. But that wide receiver group needs help. I mean, it doesn't make sense.
And I'm kind of surprised that they didn't address it. That take some sort of wide receiver in this group. I guess you want to build the running back room and run the ball. Great, that's fine. But you still need somebody to catch it, and to take the two, like we were talking about with the two quarterbacks, like you said, Dylan Gabriel makes sense. Okay, fine, you took him there, great. You thought he was good, he was on your board, that's great. Blah 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 blah. But to circle back and then take Shedeur, it just didn't make sense to me. And watching the TV, they were even, a couple of the announcers were even when they took Gabriel, then the Shedeur thing went out the window and he was off my radar because they took Gabriel. So why would they take Shedeur? I did read, I guess yesterday, that there's some connection with Dion playing for, I forget which team he played for, but he was playing with the, I guess it's Cleveland's GM maybe or something like that they used to play together. So there was this slight connection there. But even then, honestly, I think Sanders is better than what he gets credit for. Him slipping to that round, I do think was somewhat intentional. Because I don't think he's that bad. Is he that great? No. And just the not even off the field, just the is it pompous, the word I'm looking for? Just the attitude that he comes off with sometimes is frustrating.
He feels like Johnny Manziel, if I'm being honest. You're looking at him, he feels like Johnny Manziel, and it's the guy. Manziel had talent.
Yeah.
It wasn't right between the ears.
Right.
And Shedeur has been fed this line. He's been, the comments about him being entitled don't surprise me one bit. This kid has been, blinged out from day one. We got to Colorado and Prime's talking about him. I'm not convinced Shedeur wasn't carried by his wide receiver group. You had 3 wide receivers drafted out of that room in this draft.
That's
and
true.
Travis Hunter, let's not kid ourselves, at Jackson State as well, he was the star. Shedeur played well, but it was Travis Hunter doing the work. I think it kind of showed up here on draft night.
Yeah.
So the Browns to me are the Browns. They took a dookie on themselves, and here we go.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to lie to you here. This one hurts me to say it. The Steelers draft was my favorite in the division. The Steelers are, to me, what they did this year takes any excuse away from Tomlin in terms of you need to be competing for this division and winning it or going far in the playoffs. And just having a winning season is not good enough in Pittsburgh. I've heard it from a lot of friends who are Pittsburgh fans. And look, I remind them, the Bears said that once too at Lovie Smith, and they spent, better part of 15 years trying to replace that now, it feels like. So Careful what you wish for. But honestly, between the DK Metcalf trade, getting Malik Harrison, Darius Slay, Juan Thornhill, Caleb Johnson is a dude. That guy is going to be an absolute stud in Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
Jack Sawyer, throwing him with Watt on that defense. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, I had Jack Sawyer on some of my mock drafts because I liked the way he produced at edge rusher at an elite school like Ohio State. It wasn't like he was coming from some chump school. It's Ohio State. They're good. So he's got production.
Yeah, Black, the guy from Iowa. I mean, it feels a little like Mike Daniels to me. Like this is, on top of that, you already have Derek Harmon coming in.
Yeah.
I mean, this is, and then we talked about it before the show a little bit. Will Howard could be that sleeper quarterback for this entire draft class in terms of a guy who put up really good numbers in college, has the raw tools, but for whatever reason fell down the board. But Pittsburgh being Pittsburgh may have just accidented onto a diamond in the rough here for themselves. Like I said, overall to me, the Steelers, for me, won the draft. I think the Ravens are in second for the division here. And then, the Bengals are there, so they do what they have to do to help their defense. And the Browns just confuse me. Not that I hate the picks they made necessarily, just confuse me. It felt like wasted draft capital. But how do you shake out for the division? How do you rank them as far as overall results? And how do you evaluate the Steelers draft?
I will agree that the Steelers draft does look good, and what they did in free agency, getting DK Metcalf, that's huge to me. And to put him alongside Pickens, there was rumors out before the draft that they were going to trade Pickens during the draft, but I don't see why you would. Pickens has cockiness and whatever, but he still produces. So having him as even your number 2 to Metcalf now, I think last year with Pickens, they were trying too hard to make him a number 1, and he just is not there yet. Maybe eventually a number 1, but I don't really necessarily see it. But now with Metcalf as your 1, Pickens can be your number 2 and be a solid number 2. Then looking at this, I totally forgot about this, but if they got Darius Slay at DB, I love Darius Slay. I think he's very good. And you add him with Joey Porter Jr., that addresses some of their DB issues, because you had Joey Porter, which was fine, but they were still weak on the other, even the safety and cornerback aspect. They were still a little weak. So you added Thornhill and Slay. I think that's good. And then Harmon was nasty at Oregon. Just a side note, I his whole story with this draft, and then his mom passes away right afterwards is a whole nother story in itself. But I think that's a great pick. And then, like I said, Caleb Johnson, I agree with you that he is totally under the radar, but also just going to produce. And it'll be interesting to see how that all plays out, because I think that's good for them. And then, hold on one second. Sorry, I have notifications popping up. I do agree with you with the Will Howard thing with quarterback. Again, Will Howard, not every quarterback that comes out of big schools produces. I get that. But, he was producing at Ohio State. And then you put him in this offense with potentially DK Metcalf and George Pickens. He could produce and be an under the radar producing. So I think they had a good draft. I'm putting the Ravens above that, but they did have a solid draft.
And don't forget, Will Howard's time at Kansas State was stellar as well. set up for that chance to replace Kyle McCord at Ohio State. So it's, again, lots of fun to go through on that. I think as an overall, so the Steelers and the Ravens definitely were carrying the banner here. But
and I do think they just sit above Cincinnati and Cleveland right now. It's like at this point.
To me, it's a 2-horse race in the AFC North this year. I think that the Bengals are going to be – they just didn't do enough of that defense. It's going to keep playing behind it. The Browns, you know what we're going to get. They're going to win some games in the division they shouldn't, but they're still the Browns, and they'll brown it all away.
Yeah.
So, went the wrong direction there. 1 second. There we go. So, Papa Bacon, thanks for joining us, my friend. How are you today?
You bet, buddy. Good. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing great. Sorry for the late notice on this one, but hey, you know what?
That's all right.
It's hot. It's fresh. Let's do this thing. So, Rob, you got some time after you got in here for the NFC North here as well, but want to kind of through it all. So, look, the Bears still suck, but man, they got a lot better. Overall, I look at what they did in this draft. Look, Luther Burden's one of the guys I was looking at for the Packers heavily.
Yep.
Again, a yard after catch kind of guy. I will say I laughed at the Bears and the Bears fans around me. They took Colson Loveland. I know Troy loves him. He's a Michigan. Troy's our Michigan friend here, but look, Loveland to me, when you have Cole Kmet right there and you have the other needs that are still on this Bears roster, was a very odd pick. Grateful they did it, but Tyler Warren is a better player, and he was right there as well. Yeah. So kind of made me laugh a little bit, but I'll say this. They knocked it out of the park with all 3 of those second-round picks. Trapilo, Turner, Burden were absolute studs. And even going to day 3, Zach Frazier and Kyle Monange are guys that I thought were extremely talented. Adding this to what they did in the offseason, adding their completely retooling their inner line with Jonah Jackson, Joe Thuney, and Drew Dalman. And then Grady Jarrett's now going to be there to help bring Shamar Turner around. This is another good offseason overall for the Bears. I think that they still have some need for depth at D-line and linebacker, but they have good top-end talent there currently, so it's not the worst. But overall, to me, the Bears did a pretty good job through the course of this draft of the offseason. Aaron, what were your thoughts?
Yeah, first, hey, Rob, I'm sorry. I did just completely ignored you there. Sorry. Thanks for joining and helping Ben out here and helping us out.
Yeah.
Cause sometimes you throw these things together, not everybody can come on. And in fact, I can only stay on until after the NFC North, and I gotta help out with the kids upstairs. But
I understand that.
Yeah. So, I'll say this, and yes, Ben, I know you, like, in our group chat, you were having some fun with Troy there and giving him crap with Loveland. And what they're doing there, I can understand what they're doing there, because frankly, that's kind of, I think, what the Packers are trying to do, with Tucker Kraft and Musgrave. And unfortunately, Musgrave just kept getting injured and things like that. So hopefully we'll see how that goes this year. I was surprised they didn't take Tyler Warren, but I don't know enough. To be honest, I don't know enough about Loveland. I heard tons about Warren, so that's why I kind of thought, oh, maybe they're going to take him, and then they pulled that off. It was kind of funny, but yeah, I mean, it's pretty obvious they've, especially in the first 2 days, with the exception obviously of Turner, but with the first 2 days, and then around 6 and 7, they're trying to kind of give more weapons to Caleb Williams, and I think they succeeded with that. To be honest with you, I think they may have had the better draft of any of the teams in the NFC North.
Well, we said before, the Bears are reigning offseason champions however many years in a row. This can't put together when it actually matters. So there's that. Rob, what do you think about their draft, their offseason so far?
Specifically talking about Loveland, I was fully expecting it to be Warren off the board there. And then it was kind of shocked that it was Loveland. I wasn't, like, I understood the position taking, but I didn't Loveland there. My favorite out of this is Ozzie out of Boston College, the offensive tackle. I had him in a couple of my mock drafts because what I realized about him is he's basically Macari swing tackle, if you want to call it that. He can play the left tackle, he can play the right tackle. He's got multiple starts at both. That's why I was hoping the Ravens would even, put eyes on him and maybe take him because of the swing tackle option and putting him in this offense. So he went to Chicago. I think he's good. He's like 6'7", 6'8", so he's huge, and he can play multiple positions, so that's a good thing. Obviously, like the Maryland dude, I don't know much about him because I didn't keep track of Maryland as much, with the exception of some higher names. But overall, I think this draft is decent. I like the Joe Tooney out of the free agents as well.
Yeah, it's overall the Bears did what they had to do to make that line. It had to get better, and they did what they had to do there. I mean, I went to a game a little over a year ago, and you had guys trying to give me a sign with the Bears in the stands. So that's how bad their line's been the last few years. But moving on to the Lions, and here's the thing: the Lions were already really good. Like, there's no way around this. Is already a good roster. They went and got some more cornerbacks and DJ Reed and Rocky Sin. But then you throw on, and for me, this draft was blah until day 3 for the Lions. To me, they went and got what they felt like they needed. They didn't go on value; they went on need in the first 2 days, which is fine. You're doing what you want to do, but they needed a wide receiver, they needed an interior line, they needed a D tackle. Okay, got it. But on day 3, Miles Frazier falls to them. And that, I think if they knew that going into it, they'd probably draft someone else in the second round. Just call it what it is. And then you go into Hassan from Boise State at the edge. Love that pick for them. A good depth guy who can come around and can really do a lot of work, and especially with Aiden Hutchinson in that defense. Some really nice picks there. Dan Jackson's going to be another kind of, dare I say it, a Lions kind of guy. Going out there, going to bite kneecaps at safety. And so overall, I think they did their work on day 3. And the Lions, dare I say it, retooled. And I think they did their job getting better than they were last year. Yeah. Aaron, what was your takeaway?
Yeah, I would kind of agree with you. I was looking at some of the reviews going into this, and a lot of really low, like one of them even graded them like a D+. I mean, I know that's kind of stupid the day after the draft is over when you haven't even seen these guys, but it's how do you, I mean, honestly, the only team I can remember in recent years that's really like almost overachieved after, being so successful would be like a Philadelphia. I mean, Philadelphia seems to have this knack for just like, you're like, holy crap, I didn't think their defense could get any better. And yet here they are. Detroit's kind of in that spot, like you said. I mean, they're really good. If they weren't injured as badly as they were on defense, they were in the Super Bowl last year. I mean, I'm still, there's no way Washington beats them if they're at full strength or near full strength on defense. So, I think though one of the knocks I've seen from a lot of people is that they kind of overreached on a lot of these picks. Like a couple of them, I believe Tesla, the wide receiver from Arkansas, they took him like 100 spots like earlier than he was even projected by a lot of the, quote unquote experts. So yeah, I mean, like you said, I think they drafted for needs and I still, to me, I don't look at this draft and go, oh, well, I guess they're going to finish 3rd place now in the NFC North this year. It's just, they'll be fine.
No, and they have the luxury of being able to draft this way versus having they do have a stout roster.
Exactly. Yeah.
Rob, what are your thoughts on this overall?
I agree with both of you actually from multiple different positions. I think, Ben, you're right in the fact that the day 3 picks were just, to me, better than the first day picks. Like, I agree with you. Getting Miles Frazier, like, he's one of those, like, and I'm not putting him to that caliber yet, but he's like Marshall Yanda, that's just that interior offensive lineman that no one's really talking about. He just comes out and does his job.
Yep.
So that's a huge pick for them, that he could potentially, I'm not saying he is, but he could potentially be just that secure left or right guard that you just play every day and he just goes out and does his job type of thing. My big one was the don't understand how you say it, Ahmad pick. I love that kid out of Boise State. I think he has production, and I think it's a very interesting pick. Like I said before, I had him in a couple mock drafts. He's just got an edge to him, and he comes off, and I just like his caliber. And there's something to say too about Georgia defense players. So
Yeah.
the safety Jackson out of Georgia. I'm not saying all defensive players out of Georgia are great, but over the past couple of years, a lot of defensive players out of Georgia have produced. So
If they can
an
stay
overall
healthy
good
and no
pick.
jail, absolutely.
Yep.
Looking at you, Eric Stokes, and anyway, sorry, I'll stop myself before I get far on that one. But look, going to Aaron and my team, Green Bay Packers. Mark Murphy came on stage, made that point right away. For the first time since 2002, drafting a wide receiver in the first round. I didn't see the number officially yet, but this is like the first draft I can remember for the Packers ever not trading picks. Like we always move.
Yeah.
And we just let the board come to us. Throwing in the combination of the offseason, having Aaron Banks, Nate Hobbs, and McCole Hardman come to the group. Hardman's here to be that special teams player for us. He's not here to be a receiver. So they went and got their guys. Now, look, I'm going to tell you right now, for me, our draft is the opposite of the Lions. I love what we did with our first 4 picks, and then the other 4 I'm okay with. I'm just not gung-ho on them yet, to put it that way. Like, for me, it's very much a wait and see. But Matthew Golden, to me, is exactly the kind of player the Packers need right now as far as that burner to go over the top. Getting Anthony Belton, a true left tackle. Aaron and I can both talk about this, but the Packers draft for versatility on the O-line. Rarely do we grab someone who's actually a left tackle. The last time we did was Bakhtiari, and we saw that turned out. Yep. So Belton, to me, is that absolute stud, big man to play left tackle, and tells me that Rasheed Walker's is on his last year. He's going to be gone, which is fine. Mm-hmm. Savion Williams, I had pegged for the Packers before the draft started as my wide receiver of choice. This dude reminds me of DK Metcalf when he came out. Physical freak, underwhelming production in college, but still has all those tools, has those pieces that just make him stand out. 6'4", just an absolute animal. So I think that's going to be a big change. So you got 2 guys now who can play that outside to let your guys like Dobbs, to let Reed do their thing on the inside. So I feel like this was a really good 2 wide receiver picks. And then Barron Sorrell had to love the storyline there, seeing him come out day 3, get to talk to the commissioner. It's, I don't know if it's the first few times we've had 2 guys both get to come out in the draft city to their new fan base. So it's kind of neat to see that shake out the way it did, even though poor guy to sit there for however long. But he had private caterers essentially at that point by day 3. But either way, I'm personally very happy. My notes for myself was, look, our wide receiver group can no longer be questioned. You want to question our wide receiver group, get packing. It's not a question for me anymore. Now these guys have to show up and play, but the wide receiver group as a whole looks to be extremely stout. We're better than we were last year. After this draft, I can feel confident we were better than we were last year. But are we improved enough to take the next step? I'm not sure yet, honestly. I the family wants to say, yeah, we're ready to go take the Super Bowl, but I'm not that sold yet. But I am optimistic. Put it that way. Aaron, what were your thoughts?
Yeah. So first of all, Ben, you were there all 3 nights, correct? Or all 3 days?
Correct. Yep.
Okay. So what was that like when? Because I got chills when and maybe I'm really fanboying it right now, but when Mark Murphy was up there and announced that, and my Angie and I, my wife and I are sitting there on the couch, and he says the first time since 2002, and we're like, holy shit. Like before he even announced it, we knew they were getting a wide receiver. And you hear the roar of the crowd. What was that like? Over 100,000 plus people.
Break, and everything just got turned up, right? Like everything's real. It's huge. And then, I mean, the play on words wrote itself, right? Green and golden. All are right there for us. And it's, I was joking around. So I brought my son down all 3 days as well. And I was kind of on the fence because with the weather for a little bit, but he ended up making it through. With the golden pick, he's looked, it's one of those moments he can't quite make up, right? He looks at me, he's like, Dad, are we happy? I'm like, yeah, we're happy. Like this, earlier in the night, I was actually talking to him too, because like, it's how kids are, right? They want to have the flashy players, or he's talking a big game about whatever. And very close friends of ours are big Jags fans. So when Travis Hunter went to the Jags, my buddy, I'll buy you that jersey. That one I'll get for you. By the end, he's like, Dad, I think I want Matthew Golden's jersey. I was like, okay, there we go. So, like one of those things just makes you smile, but it literally was like a Stone Cold or Undertaker showing up when not expected kind of pop in the whole draft theater when it happened.
Nice. So, I mean, what was interesting is going into the draft, I heard a lot of people saying that the Packers, like that was one of the positions they guaranteed the Packers wouldn't draft on night one is wide receiver. And I heard so many people say, well, they don't need any more help at wide receiver. And I'm sorry, but they did. They did need more help at wide receiver. And I get how it's easy for people to look at it and look at the list of guys they have and say, well, they really don't. Number one, again, they still, I guess the one thing this didn't solve, but it may over time, is that, we still don't have necessarily a quote unquote true number one wide receiver. We don't yet, but whatever. But this idea that, look, we have Christian Watson, who's not going to be there at all this year. If he maybe comes back for the playoffs, but otherwise he probably won't even do that. You got Dobbs, who last year, started becoming more susceptible to concussions. So you never know how that's going to work out. You got Wicks, who hopefully can get rid of the drops and do a better job of that this year. But you had a big group with very little consistency, in my opinion. Like you didn't even Jaden Reed, he would have game, and not that it was his fault, because obviously a lot of that's play calling, but you'd have games where this dude would have 2 or 3 touchdowns and just explode. And then other games where you didn't even know he was on the field. Yep. It was like, oh, well, we'll use him as a decoy. Why? What do you, and please stop with the damn end arounds. But anyway, I love Matthew Golden. I love that pick. I mean, just besides the drama that it created, the guy I think is going to be great. I know our buddy Adam had said to me he wasn't a real big fan of Golden. I want to give the guy a chance. The guy's a speedster. He can, he can go downfield. That's one of the things that we need. I like what I heard about Savion Williams. I don't know him as well as you do, but they kind of, the analysts were kind of saying for him, I heard him compared to a Cordarrelle Patterson. I also heard him compared to maybe a poor man's Deebo Samuel, which I'll take that too, especially as a rookie. I mean, if he can, do some of that. Belton, yes, we do need depth at offensive line. Like you said, if he could be great at left tackle for us, and if Walker's not going to be around long, that would be awesome. As far as, I remember saying to my wife after Friday night, I was surprised we went all offense the first 2 days, but I'll trust Gutekunst knows what he's doing. But I did say to her, I'm like, I have a feeling we're going to be doing all defense the third day, which we ended up doing. I love Sorrell. I love that story. I mean, maybe it's because it was in Green Bay that I've become more sentimental or something, because normally I don't give a rip about storylines necessarily as much as I did, this time. But like just that whole story, I mean, the kids stayed around. I mean, how many of those kids would stay around? They normally would be out after the first night, but he stuck around. The story I heard was that Goodell was actually going to leave and then told him he would stay as long as Barron stayed. And, he said, I'll stay and I'll announce you and you can come out. We'll do the whole thing. Which, if that story is true, I tell you what, I've been a critic of Roger Goodell over the years, as pretty much every single fan probably has. At some point, he's pissed you off as a fan, whether it's a suspending you one of your guys or whatever. But I've heard so many stories about him over the last few days from people who I know here in the area who either interact with him or whatever, that I'm like, I'm appreciating him more and more now after this draft. And I love the fact that he embraces the whole. I've said I think he would make a great heel in wrestling. I mean, he just soaks up the damn, the booze. Like, all right, come on. He could sit there and whine about it or like have his feelings hurt, but he's just like, oh, come on, you can do better than that. I mean, that was actually pretty funny.
I will say this: the boos were nowhere near as loud on Roger in Green Bay than they were in Nashville or other drafts I've seen before. Like, it was very, very like Midwest nice to him.
Yeah.
And to your point, Aaron, watching him from the pit, even going through, he shook every hand that wanted to be shaked. He took pictures and signed autographs for whoever wanted them. Like, Goodell was very gracious to the crowd in Green Bay through the course of this draft. And that really stood out to me as just kind of as an observer that you don't necessarily see on television, but you just see being in person. That was pretty unique.
Well, yeah, and I know I do one more quick note on that, and then I'll finish up with the Packers here. But I know a guy who, because I think Saturday morning they did the whole a thing before the draft started with riding the bikes, so you can bring your bike out and all that. And he was out there with Mark Murphy and some of the other Packer executives. And one of the things he said was that my friend Pat was there. And said that a number of times Roger Goodell's assistants tried to get him to, like, hey, we got to get going here. And there was a line of people who wanted to meet him and shake his hand and get autographs, get pictures. And he stayed till the very end. Like, he even told a couple times they tried to kind of cut off the line. And he was like, no, let them keep coming here. We're going to do this whole thing. I mean, it was very cool. So anyway, here, I got to go up and say goodnight to my son, but let me just say, we'll finish off the Packers here real quick. I mean, they need, obviously to me, their biggest help that they needed was on defense overall. I mean, and like you said, I'll kind of wait and see at this point. I don't know enough about. I mean, I know they love their Georgia players, so they got Brinson in round 6. They needed some help at corner. Well, was Williams a tackle, or was he on defense?
Williams is a tackle. He's off the tackle.
Oh, okay. So I was mistaken there. They didn't go all defense on this last day, but
it takes
but
4 or 5 not bad though.
Yeah, 4 or 5 not bad. So I'm glad that they got more options. I am excited to see what Sorrell can do. And Brinson, a guy coming out of Georgia, is always going to be. I mean, with the exception of Stokes, who I think more of his was more injury issues, and you can't really help that. But yeah, so I'm excited about the draft. I'm happy with it. Will it mean we're going to finish better than 3rd? I mean, I would hope so. I would hope at least we finish in front of the Vikings. But we'll have to wait and see. And with that, I'll send over to Rob. Like I said,
your Stackhouse out of Georgia was his counterpart. Was actually more productive in college. We signed him as an undrafted free agent as well. So both tackles. So nice. 2 tackles from Georgia came to Green Bay in the course of this draft process.
Nice. Okay, well then we'll be good. So okay, I'll be right back, guys. Rob can go ahead and give his.
Yeah, Rob, what do you think?
I like that Aaron went through even your receivers now, because that was one of my questions to you guys, even in locally. Like, I liked your wide receiving core last year. I liked Watson, even though he kept getting hurt and all that stuff. But I like Watson. I liked Reed. I obviously like Romeo Dobbs, even though his production was off last year. But
thank you for him, by the way.
What'd you say?
Thank you for him, by the way.
You're welcome. But like, you had I would say, halfway decent wide receiving core. Was it the best? Did you see problems? Yeah, you're more local. You probably did. But I was like, I thought you guys had a halfway decent. But to add 2 more to it, like, it maybe makes it seem like it was a little weaker than I thought, being an outside person. And again, I like the golden pick. I didn't study much up on him, but I even just like the storyline, the green and gold storyline. His suit was spectacular. It was like perfect for it. It was a good moment. And the guy that came out on stage, I forget what his name is, but when he talked about since that year that they hadn't drafted a wide receiver, and like you guys all cheered, and it was cool to see, cool to hear. You know, obviously being at the draft in Nashville, like that was a whole different scenario, but like it was cool to see because I've been to Green Bay, and it was cool to see it in the parking lot and like just see it there, and I liked it. It was enjoyable. Back to the guys, I think Bolton is one of those ones like I was talking about a little bit with Frazier that it's just an underrated offensive tackle. Was he like the big name on the screen? No, but he was like the NC State production, if that makes sense. Like he just had the offensive line production, and he's solid. He's a guy that's going to be able to come in and produce, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
Williams, I didn't know much about him until you put him on my radar the other day. He's big, but he also seems to do a decent amount of like gadget plays. Like Aaron was talking about the or it was Aaron or you was talking about the Deebo Samuel aspect, and Deebo's what 6'1", and Williams is like
6'4". I mean, he's an absolute freak.
Right, but even the little bit of tape that I watched, just YouTube tape, he was doing a bunch of gadget, even end arounds, and like he was like, I think it was Aaron that brought it up with the Cordell Patterson comparison, and I'm like, that's not necessarily wrong. Just the little bit of tape that I saw, like that's how TCU used him. I think there was even a couple times that he lined up at quarterback, and it was hiked to him.
That's correct.
So, it'll be interesting to see what kind of gadget plays you guys come up with on the offense and how that produces. But again, it's a solid pick, and I agree with you that like the first offensive couple days was really good, and then the back end, like I don't even know much about some of these guys. Obviously, defense out of Georgia makes sense. I did with the Texas edge, Sornell. Eric and I were both watching at the time, and Erica, like me and her, were both making comments about it. And I was talking to her that even, I guess it was last year or the year before, there was somebody that was supposed to go on day one that ended up not going to either day 2 or day 3. I forget who it was, but he stayed around in the green room, same as Sornell did, that he's like, no, I'm going to walk across stage and hear my name called. Like, that is my point of being here. I don't care whether I'm going on day 2 or day 3. Like, I'm going to walk across stage. I'm here. This is what I'm doing. So I like that aspect. And I thought it was even cooler that Green Bay drafted him because he gets it. Like, not only was staying there just to get his name called, but then he gets it called by the hometown team. And they get to basically parade him out there, parade him into the crowd. Like, that had to just be an awesome moment for him. So
absolutely,
it was cool to see. And overall, Green Bay, I think you guys had a solid draft. It'll be interesting to see how you guys use it all. I definitely like the wide receiver room between Golden and Williams added to, like, even Reed. Like, I thought Reed, like Aaron was talking about, like, you would have him produce on have a huge game with like 3 touchdowns type of thing, and then all of a sudden next week he was not. And it was like, as the fantasy aspect of me, I was mad because I'm like, can you just produce? But
as our pro Packers receivers now, right? It's kind of like it used to be with Shanahan with running backs, and you just didn't know what you're going to get because there's always going to be a different dude's going to be used.
Yep.
And I think it was last year, the year before, which one it was now. The Packers had a different leading receiver every single month of the season. And this is one of those things that makes it really hard to defend, though, too, where it's like, well, yeah, you can go ahead and double up Reed if you want, but we're going to have Dobbs over here now.
Right.
Or, hey, Bo Melton's going to show up. He's going to do big things.
Right.
So it's the conversation that a lot of the guys had with me draft night was looking and saying, well, who's the odd man out now? You brought in Hardman. Now you have Golden and Williams. I mean, yeah, we know Watson's hurt, but like, are we trading Dobbs? There's rumors before about that. Malik Heath, Bo Melton have had some good moments for us. Are they? What's the deal? So I think it's gonna be interesting to see how that plays out. Don't be surprised if the Packers keep 6 receivers on the roster.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe 7 to start the season. Who knows?
Right.
But overall, it's going to be fun to watch this thing play out. And as a Packer fan, it's definitely a different era to be sure. And looking forward to this. One other thing to note of the comparisons: Williams was compared to Debo, Golden was compared to Garrett Wilson. If that's our draft, I'll tell you what, this is going to be, if that really comes to fruition, this would be one of the best drafts you've ever seen as far as offensive weapons going to a team. So I'm excited for that. But finishing up with my least favorite team in our division, the Minnesota Vikings. And I put more key acquisitions because there really were more for them anyway. But this list that they have here on the left is why that list on the right is so small. So overall, getting Ryan Kelly and Will Fries, adding Jonathan Allen, Jeff Okudah, Rondale Moore, Isaiah Rodgers, Jordan Mason, Ed Ingram, and Sam Howell. I mean, the Vikings did work before the draft, and Ty Felton out of Maryland is a nice pickup for their wide receiver group here as well. Donovan Jackson fills a need for them and interior line. And we talked before, Georgia edge rushers. I mean, they're stacked. They're going to be 5 deep with 5 stars, so something's going to happen there. Kobe King had a nice season at Penn State. And they get another tight end here with Bartholomew of Pitt. So, I mean, overall, the Vikings, the draft was underwhelming, but their offseason as a whole, the Vikings did – this is kind of their new MO. Last season, they did the same thing. They went and signed a bunch of veterans on short-term deals, and they all overachieved the contract. So they're trying to catch lightning in the bottle here again as they set up for what looks to be the beginning of the McCarthy era for them, but we'll see what kind of follows out. Papa Bacon, welcome back. Going through the Vikings now.
Yeah.
What's your impression of the Vikings draft and offseason with these names I have listed here on the slide?
Yeah.
I'm stepping away real quick.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think we knew going in that they weren't going to have as many opportunities in the draft, and that sort of thing. And then for them to trade and bring in Sam Howell, I just, I would say that next season they're going to have, I mean, certainly going to be worse than they were this year. But then by saying that, I feel like I might be actually helping them out and, the Packers or something. So I don't know. I'm kind of superstitious with that.
Rub your lucky cheese somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, what was funny is, hold on, let me see. They actually, so one of the articles I was reading was from MSN, and I can't remember the name of the guy. It was something Dvorchak. Let me see. Yeah, Kyle Dvorchak. I'm not sure if his name is right, but so he was giving the grades to all the different teams. Like Lions, he gave a D+, and Packers he gave a C+, and the Vikings he gave a C+ to also. And I'm just like, and then I think the Bears he actually gave. Actually, I want to say the Bears he gave a D+ to, didn't he? Oh no, Bears are C+. Yeah. Okay. So, but he was basically just talking about how they kind of did what they could with the amount that of options that they had, but and then talked about the Sam Howell trade. I'll be honest with you, I don't know a whole ton about these guys. I was surprised that they actually picked in the first round. I thought they actually might trade down. In fact, a lot of other people that I had talked to said they felt the same way. So, but I think they did the best. I mean, they got, this Ty Felton, the wide receiver. Okay. So you got someone to add there to help out JJ McCarthy. But I mean, everything, no matter how, what they got here, I mean, I thought they were smart by re-signing and re-upping with Aaron Jones, because of the fact that he was able to stay healthy last season, which I was surprised. I mean, relatively healthy, which I was surprised with. But I mean, everything's going to hinge on whether or not JJ McCarthy, number one, is healthy, and number two, actually is as good as so many people seem to think he is. And I know that's like kind of Captain Obvious kind of stuff there, but yeah, that's I guess that's about all I got with these guys.
No,
So,
fair enough. And the thing I'll point out here too is looking at the free agents. I put this on here for the reason of looking at what they did. You have so many first round draft picks in, or day 1, day 2 picks in this list here as well. But Isaiah Rodgers going with Jeff Okudah to go back in the secondary, Patrick Peterson retiring. Like there's pieces there. It's interesting. Rondale Moore adds that wide receiver group where now he can be a really good 4 or 3. Now they shake it out here.
Yeah.
The Vikings are better in a lot of ways, but they still overachieved last year. So it's kind of the hard part. But Jordan Mason, to me, is one of those sneaky picks they picked up that really could be that like next running back. He had very good moments in San Fran last year.
Yeah.
Getting him in Minnesota, I hope I'm wrong here, but he could be a steal for them. And especially when you throw in guys like Freeze, Kelly, and Ingram, they really redid their interior line as well. There's a lot to be happy with there. And Sam Howell, I mean, the guy feels like he's a new Ryan Fitzpatrick. He just kind of bounces around the league every year. But likable guy, plays above what he's supposed to be. So overall, the Vikings are going to be the Vikings. They're going to be a pain in the butt. And, I mean, hate to say it, they're not a bad team. No. Looking at the overall draft, the Packers and the Bears, to me, carry the division overall. The Lions were an honorable mention here. The Vikings taking the tail end for the division on who won the draft.
Yeah.
I'll give a slight edge for now to the Bears, just strictly based on how looking at this again, getting Luther Burden where they did was a steal. You throw on Monangai, you throw in Frazier, you throw in Turner. They did a lot of things to help that team get better. So the Bears are eventually going to be not terrible.
Yeah.
They still suck, but they might not be terrible. And it's just kind of one of those pieces that you look at. I have a hard time, if I'm being honest, scoring them too poorly here, especially with their O-line pickups they made in the offseason. So Packers, Bears, Lions. I mean, the partial part of me wanted to go with the Packers, but I'm going to go with the Bears, a slight edge of Packers second, Lions third, Vikings in last.
Yeah, I would agree with that too. So.
Rob, any thoughts on the Vikings overall, the offseason and the picks?
No, not really. I obviously love the Ty Fulton pick out of Maryland. My only concern is just him being stuck behind a decent wide receiving core. I hope he can, shine and make a name for himself. And even really, to me, all the Vikings depends on J.J. McCarthy's health. Mm-hmm. If J.J. McCarthy's not healthy, who else do they have? Because
Jordan Addison and Rondale Moore being added as well. But that's
no, but I mean, just even as quarterback.
Oh, sorry, Sam Howell's Slim wide receiver. Yeah. Sam Howell's the pick,
Right. Yeah, and I understand him being traded there, and that's great. And I actually thought Sam Howell going to Washington back when he was drafted was decent. And I think Sam Howell sometimes can get the job done. Is he spectacular? No, but he can get the job done. But again, if JJ's not healthy, then I don't see them really producing that much. Yeah, they have Jefferson and decent wide receiving core and obviously Aaron Jones and stuff. But again, if JJ's not healthy, then I don't see it. So
yeah.
I'm going to call out to a former 5th-round pick out of Maryland for the Minnesota Vikings here that reminds me of a little bit here, and that's Stephon Diggs coming into the situation he's coming into. So it's if he can replicate what Diggs did, I think that's what Minnesota's hoping for. Again, the Terps have had some really nice players overall come into the league the last few years. I think this is actually one of the better classes they've actually had as far as numbers. Yep. So that being said, guys, I'm going to wrap this thing up for us. Thank you for joining me tonight. We went through both North divisions. Yep. And if you're watching, please join us the next few nights. I go through some more divisions and try and make some time around the same time each night. So thanks again. We'll see y'all later.
And thank you again for both of you for having me. I enjoyed being on, and please feel free to ask anytime. I enjoyed talking about this.
It was fun, man. Thank you again.
Thanks, Rob. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Aaron. Right. Have a good one.
Bye. Thanks. Bye.